Hi, I'm Monica Weitzel, and I want to welcome you to a very special edition of Community Hotline. We're here at MetroEast in Gresham, and with me I have Angie Cochran, who was the very first producer of Community Hotline show 20 years ago. Thanks for being here, Angie.
Oh, thanks for having me.
This is a really big deal. Community Hotline is our flagship program here at MetroEast, and 20 years ago, somebody had a brainchild. You had just some remarkable idea in your head to start this show, and I want to hear about that because this is the 20th year for this show. I figured out that we've had about 2,800 interviews.
Wow.
And about 400 different organizations have been represented over the years, which is amazing. Yeah. And next year, coming about a year from now, we'll be hitting our 1,000th, if I can say it, episode, which is pretty amazing. So tell me about, how did this ever start?
Well, when it started, it didn't look like all this. It was much simpler, but...
And you weren't here in this building?
No, we were out at Mount Hood Community College.
Right.
But, in the most basic sense, the Community Hotline was a show that would allow community groups and organizations, nonprofits in the community, a way to come in and use the facility to get their message out to the community.
Right.
Without having to go through the workshops and become, video producers. They had a message and they didn't necessarily have the time to do all that, but this was a way to get them involved in in the organization and in the community.
Well, because people now still can come in here, any organization can come in here, take our workshops, learn how to create their own public service announcements or their own show about whatever it is they do. But this gave them an already structured talk show, so to speak. But tell me what is different between today and when it started out?
With the show itself?
Yeah,
or
with the show itself. Well, what is the philosophy? Has it changed, do you think?
Well, if you go back the 20 years, and actually before that, when I started with, it was Multnomah Cable Access is what it was called back then. And I started just about the time that Mike Canty did, but back then there wasn't really a concept of outreach to the community and bringing more people in, or even the term community television wasn't something that we used back then. We had the government television that was up and running and did the meetings and even some documentary shows.
City council meetings. And
and they had a very active education department that did a homework hotline show and other regular programming, and a very active public access department with a lot of producers that did
shows about whatever.
But whatever they want to do shows on, a lot of series shows, studio shows. But there weren't a lot of community groups using the organization.
Were there not a lot of nonprofits around, or? Well,
back then it just seemed like it was, we provide the best service to those who came in to the door, who found us. And
the nonprofit groups didn't think about coming in here and utilizing that
Well, maybe some tried it, I'm sure, and some, did it with success, but it's the kind of thing where, well, if you're doing a studio show, you got to have a whole crew of people, and there's quite a learning curve when you get started. You got to take several classes, and even after the classes, you're not always as good as maybe you'd want to be if you're wanting to put on a professional show. So there's just a lot to learn there, a lot that maybe the people in the nonprofits and organizations were the ones with the least amount of time to kind of, take on that.
That's right. But they also are the ones that have the least amount of money usually,
yeah, that's true.
As far as marketing themselves or getting the word out about what they do. So I think that's why it was such a perfect fit for those groups. It's like, hey, we have a forum for you. We have a way for you to come out and tell the world about what it is you do and why it's important, and therefore maybe you'll want to volunteer, or maybe you'll want to donate money, or maybe you just know about this resource for yourself if you need it. How many shows were you doing? How often was the show on the air?
When we started it, it was every Tuesday, and we had Community Hotline on for an hour live, and it was 4 segments, like 15-minute segments, and then followed by a speak out, which I understand you're not doing that anymore, and probably that dropped off years ago. That was a show designed for individuals who wanted to come on and had a message. But it seemed like it was harder to fill those slots. With the nonprofits, and I'm going to give you just a little history here.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Because maybe this was a question you were going to ask me about anyway. But with the nonprofits, we were looking for ways that to get them in to use the services. But before we ever started this, I mean, it seems like such a basic thing now. Oh, what a good idea, and it's great, and it's even better than it was before. You know, so much more elaborate now. But it didn't all come as one single idea. Hey, let's do this. This makes real sense. It kind of developed over years, and what should we do for the community, and what are their needs? So when I started it, and I was, I went from being producer assistant to we actually started up the outreach department. I was the outreach coordinator and the volunteer coordinator.
Which was a new department altogether.
Yeah, it was a whole new thing. It was like, hey, we should do this. And I give credit to Rose Yandel, who was my supervisor at the time, and Alex Quinn, who was the first director of the organization, because they were very forward-thinking, and it was just kind of the next thing, and here's what we can do to make this great organization even greater and serve, you know, even more people in the community. And so I started out by coming up with a Excel document, a list of, my goal was 100 nonprofits, 100 nonprofit organizations and community groups. And back then we didn't have like internet. I mean, maybe it was starting to be around, but it wasn't something that everybody
it wasn't anything like it is today.
So I used the phone book, and I think I probably had a big list maybe from the chamber or something, and I just went down and made cold calls, you know, put the organization on, tried to talk to the director or the contact person, asked a little about their organization, you know, their needs, a what if. You know, if we started up a program that would be for nonprofits and, you know, tried to...
Would you be open to that?
Yeah, is this something you think you might use? Would that serve your needs? What would some of the features of that be that would be most useful to you? I got a lot of positive results. Some people were kind of hesitant because they still didn't want to be on TV or this
people
or
are scared to be on TV.
But I got a lot of yeses, and from that, you know, we started up the show. So, you know, it just seemed like it fit with, you know, what they needed, and it gave them that opportunity to get in, you know, without a lot of effort and get their message out.
Yeah, and I still think it's a great service. We have a video that has kind of a look back at some of the changes through the years, and so I think we should probably try to take a look at that now. Maybe it'll remind you. Maybe it'll remind you of of some of the changes that have gone on. So let's roll that.
Gresham Rotary Club was founded in 1948.
And I would like to tell you about Rita's Place and our fundraiser.
I'm Bridget Bayer. I'm the coordinator for Opportunity Knox.
Welcome to this edition of Community Hotline.
Hi, welcome back to Community Hotline. I'm Monica Weitzel, and I am here this evening with Major James Sloan of the Salvation Army. Major Sloan, welcome back.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. You've been kind of a regular on our show,
We have indeed.
show lately, and I haven't had the privilege of hosting the show, so I haven't gotten to be on the TV with you, but I'm proud to be here.
Well, it's my treat.
Hi, and welcome to Community Hotline. My name is Monica Weitzel, and we're here in Gresham at MetroEast Community Media. I'd say there's a few little changes there.
Yeah, it looks a lot different now.
It does look different. I got to give a lot of credit to Emily Vidal. She's the director, and she does a fabulous job. This is our new set, and the thing that strikes me the most is that back then the nonprofits had to represent themselves. They didn't have somebody asking them the questions, right? So, but sometimes they brought somebody on with them to ask the questions.
When it first started, we didn't have hosts. We were trying to do it as, you know, staff efficient as possible.
Right.
But, and I would try to, in talking to people and prepping them for the show, I would suggest that maybe one of them acts as a host and kind of interviews the other person and speaks, you know, it'll make it go smoother. But it still seemed like there were a lot of people hesitant to do that because they weren't used to being on television. And, you know, it didn't take long before we could see that, you know, if we wanted to bring more people on and make them feel comfortable on television, we needed a host. So at the time we were doing a show called Community Spotlight, sounds a lot like, but it was a show that we did once a month that was hosted, and it went for an hour, and it usually had a group, or maybe if there was an issue, a number of groups. And
was it like a debate kind of thing, or like a round table?
It was a discussion.
Okay.
Discussion, and sometimes there would be a topic that would have we'd have a number of groups come in, and they'd each be able to kind of add their input. But we ended up taking that host, and she was willing to host the community hotline for anybody who wanted a host.
Right. So how long did that go on? Because I know when I came here, I've been here about 9 years now, it was an unhosted show. So somehow it kind of
probably
changed
as long
again.
as that lady wanted to do it for free.
Probably so.
Because I don't think she was getting paid. I know, I did it for, I don't know, a number of years, and then things changed in the organization, and I had different duties, and Allison took it on. So I'm not really sure at what point.
Yeah, Allison was producing it when
but I imagine it's when, when that lady decided she didn't want to host it, and nobody stepped forward.
And it was actually a call-in show when I first started here. So,
was it? Okay.
Yeah, so people, could call in and ask their questions of the groups. And sometimes that was great, and other times, depending on the content, sometimes, some subjects are really spark interest of the public, and they want to call in, and others are, they're more informational and they don't call. So it was kind of a, sometimes it worked really well, sometimes it didn't. What was the hardest thing for you in producing this show? I mean, what kinds of obstacles did you come up against trying to?
Well, there's all the things you have to do, when you're starting up a new show. Like the sets. Of course, we didn't have anything like this. It seems like I was hoping you would, had some shots of the set we had, but I didn't see it there.
Yeah,
I think it was something pretty basic. I think it was just like, burlap against the wall, or maybe burlap dividers with community hotline on it,
Yeah.
Nothing real fancy. And the graphics, I think, Lauren was working at the time. He was working here, and I think he probably made the graphics. The open was a pretty basic open. There were all the little things to start up a show. But actually, I think the hardest part really was, the whole research that went in before the show ever started, and the calling of all those nonprofits, and then of course, the constant filling the slots by calling people again to get them on.
And filling out the paperwork and making sure you have the release form signed and all that.
So, new startup, but then build it and they will come. Well, they will, but you got to call them.
Did you have any guests that that really were a problem, or that were really wonderful, or that really stand out in your mind?
Well, I'm not going to talk about the ones
You
that
don't
are
have to say the names.
We can talk about that later. But I do remember a number of organizations, and I really, at this point, honestly, it's been 20 years, so I can't remember for sure which ones, but I was very happy to see that, after being on the show one time, they were interested in coming back. How often can we be on? When can we be back again?
Right. Yeah, we had certain groups that would repeat often, like the Gresham Chamber of Commerce. Depending on who the CEO was at the time, sometimes they wanted to be on very, very regularly, and sometimes we'd have to say, that's enough. You've been on 6 times this year.
But it says something, right?
Yeah, and that's great.
Back, it's of value to them. And
yeah, we have the Gresham Art Walk. They've been on many times. Ride Connection. One of the people in the little video that we saw there was Leslie, Leslie Garth. She runs Ride Connection right down the street, and we'd have her come in, and she filled in for me one day when I couldn't make it here, and so it was in the Gresham Senior Center. There are certain ones that would come on fairly regularly, and that's always fun. People that you knew, if somebody canceled out, you could call them and say, hey, you want to come fill in, which is always great. I think one of the groups that I really enjoyed one of the first ones I had on was the Circus Project, and we had a contortionist come in. And they taught circus skills to homeless youth. And we had a table set up, and she did her, the leg behind the head, and then I twisted around. That was pretty crazy. We didn't do that kind of thing very often, but it was fun. Yeah, that was fun. Did you ever have performances at all, or was it pretty much?
I think it was pretty much speaking, from what I remember.
Yeah.
I did notice on some of the more recent shows of yours that I watched, and even the one I was watching just before I came on, it's nice that you're able to put in a lot of visuals.
Probably more so than
the show changing in that way. Where the one I was watching the other day, I know had produced video of an event, and you had quite a few visuals from their artwork, which is not. We couldn't do that back then because it was so simple. It was like two cameras. It's very simple switcher.
Right.
Switch between the two cameras. No graphics capable. Well, we had text, but no way to bring in pictures. If somebody had visuals, they would have to be the kind that you would pin up on the easel.
Oh yeah.
And then have the camera get a nice tight shot. Right.
Yeah, we do a lot more of that. In fact, we have a couple pictures from back in the day that I'd like to take a look at here. This is these
yeah,
are.
that goes back a ways.
Now, are
Can you
these?
see where I am?
Let's see. Where are you?
That would have been a long time ago.
Oh.
I'm at the top of the stairs there. See, I'm
there
wearing
you are.
like a black with a vest.
So is this the staff at?
That was the staff. They had a pretty good sized staff.
Yeah, some of those people I do recognize. So, how many of these people worked on Community Hotline? You only had you had a fairly
me.
small crew, right?
Because I don't. After a while, Allison did, but then, Lauren's back there. He helped out with the startup and the graphics, but he didn't actually work on the show, as far as I remember.
Oh, Lauren, I didn't even recognize him there. And
he's
there's
back there.
Rob Brading, our CEO, who is just retired after 24 years. So, yeah, that's been a while. And,
I recognize
there
her.
There you are. Now this is MCTV, which was
That was Multnomah
County
Community Television. At the time.
and the video soapbox. So tell me about that. What was that?
Well, as we were developing our ideas and philosophy of what community television should be and what vehicles might work for people out in the community that wanted to get messages out without having to take the workshops, one of them we came up with was the video soapbox. And this was a 4x4 by 8-foot high booth. You like the patriotic look?
Yeah, that's great.
Video soapbox. I'd take it out to the library on a regular basis, Gresham Library, and out to Mall 205 and some other very public places like that, community events. And people, whoever wanted to give a message on television could get in front of my camera and give a message. I think they had a two-minute limit. And we'll put together a show. The problem with that was, this is just something they'd run across when they happened to be at the library or happened to be at the fair or something, and they didn't necessarily have an idea. So the first few shows were, "Hi, Mom," or silly
there was
things.
no specific question they were answering or any specific subject.
After the first one, I think we developed a question, so people who wanted to answer that question, would get in and talk about that one question. So at least that way the shows had themes, and it worked for that, and we could do television shows out of it, but it seemed like that didn't really serve the purpose of giving people that avenue to get their message out, because it was so random as to when it was going to be someplace. And
I could see during an election year that would be very popular.
But if it was something where they really had something they wanted to talk about and it was not our question, well, that didn't really work. It worked great for outreach, because we could have brochures and tell people about the organization,
right.
But not so much for that. So one of the things we started up after that, along with the Community Hotline, was a show called Speak Out.
Okay.
And it was live also, and individuals could come on that show. The nonprofits felt very strongly about having a venue of their own where they were surrounded by other nonprofits and didn't have.
They didn't have to go up against
get the wild and wacky.
Right.
Because that came up a lot in when I was doing the research.
Sure. Yeah.
But the problem with the Speak Out was that, if you have a weekly show and you have 4 weekly slots, it's much harder to fill those slots if you don't have a list of people to call. The nonprofits,
Right.
I could keep calling people and filling the slots. But with the Speak Out, it's like, well, we get 2 people. It's like, well, there really just wasn't enough regular need for that
right.
to keep it going.
And the nonprofits really do have that need. I think it's a great resource for them to be able to tell their story, ask for volunteers, ask for donations if that's what they need, promote an event, that kind of thing. So I think that need is going to keep on going. It is, the soapbox, it reminds me of one of our old volunteers, Laird P. Ross, who used to say that this is a great,
Laird,
I figured the last American soapbox. And so there is an opportunity for people to come here and do their own shows. And but for this venue or for this particular show, I think it's a really good resource for the community.
Like it was something that was really needed more for the nonprofits, because you already had a lot of ways for individual producers to do their own shows.
You said you had 15 shows, or 15-minute shows, 4 15-minute ones.
Yeah.
So how did you get the guests on and off in an hour show? Because that's like, there's no time in between.
Yeah, we weren't able to go into a lot of detail. A lot of it was, it was just basic information about their organization and the service they provided, and they, put up for more information, call us number.
Right.
Between segments, you probably do that on this show. You put up the graphics with the music behind, and
then a public service announcement just to change out the guests is what we would do. But we only do 3 15-minute segments.
Like Chinese fire drill.
Yeah, exactly.
Hurry,
okay, you're done. Go. And
Right.
The next group's up. Yeah. Did you ever have anything really unusual happen during a show? I know I had a guy come on where his phone rang twice, his cell phone. Probably didn't have cell phones 20 years ago, but his cell phone went off twice. And the first time, I'm kind of like, okay, I just kind of ignore it, and he reaches down and turns it off. But a couple minutes later, it went off again. And
Are you going to answer that?
it was his daughter. He hadn't told her that he was going to be on TV, and she didn't know why he wasn't home. So.
No, I don't think we had anything like that going on.
Yeah. I know. That I always have told the guests that, you know, when the show's over, usually they pan out. So usually the camera operators will pan out, and you can see the whole studio, but they'll take the audio down. And I remember one gentleman was so excited. It was his very first interview, and he jumped up at the end and went, "Woohoo!" You know. And I said, "That's great, and you're still on TV." And I was okay with it because he was happy with the interview. But yeah, it's funny to see people's reactions to seeing themselves on TV and being able to get through it. You know, most people do really well. I had one guy who just sweated bullets for the whole time, and I felt so bad for him.
I just think it's so great that you're still doing the show and that it's become something much more than what I started, because it was so simple, you know, back then. I mean, it was professional lighting. It was, you know, smooth as far as the video production went. And the audio was, but it was like very simple, very, very simple.
Well, community media has changed a lot in all those years. I mean, our equipment is, you know, fantastic here, and people have better knowledge, and just the technology's changed a lot. You know, we really, really couldn't do it without our volunteers, and we've used it a lot. And you can tell me if you did this, but we use Community Hotline a lot as a training vehicle. So people come in here and they take, you know, the free orientation, and then maybe they'll take a studio camera class and a studio control room class, and then but then they're not ready to get in there and do their own show, but they want to work on somebody's show. So coming in here, they can work on this show, and we have half staff and half volunteers. So it's like we're holding their hand a little bit until they get used to it.
Well, isn't it? It's a great opportunity for volunteers when they're trying to learn, and you've got a production like this where you need volunteers and they need to learn.
Right.
See, when they had me be the outreach coordinator, I didn't know if there was a reason that I was also the volunteer coordinator, or if they just thought there wasn't enough to do to fill the whole position. You're going to do this too. But I thought they really worked well together, because we'd have the groups that wanted to come in and had the content.
Right.
And then we had all these people that, you know, wanted to do productions, or maybe just wanted to volunteer on shows, but they wanted to learn more.
Right.
And this was a way for them, you know, to be learning, you know, whatever they needed to learn, you know, to do their own shows.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, because we really have a great crew, sometimes those volunteers don't ever want to leave the show, and they would be here, you know, week after week, and become very, very, very loyal volunteers. I know that, in fact, on this show here tonight, we've got, you know, our camera operators here are volunteers, and we've got people in the control room that are doing the audio, and you know, we
what
wouldn't.
would you do without the volunteers?
We could not do it without the volunteers. It would be way too much. It's too, you know, it's in the studio. There's a lot of. It's pretty intensive as far as the amount of people you need. Now, you started out your show doing it, however, in a small studio, right?
Well, yeah, we had some larger productions that we did, you know, community productions that we did for different groups. We had one that was for the Spanish community, one for the aging services, one that was, well, the community spotlight I mentioned. We used a lot of crew for that, volunteers.
Right.
The community hotline didn't use that many volunteers because it was really so simple.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we had 2 cameras, so we had 2 camera people. I mean, we probably sometimes had 1 camera person because, you know, you could step over 3 feet and you know, move the other camera. And then we had a person usually doing the audio and the graphics, you know, the text graphics with people's lower thirds. And that was it, you know.
Well, we still are encouraging people to come volunteer here at MetroEast, and if you take the classes, you know, come and you know, volunteer on this show. I had a 10-year-old boy one time run camera for me. Did a fabulous job. We also have a volunteer who is legally blind, who does a great job because his vision is very, you know, very precise one area, and because this isn't a show where there's a lot of movement, he can do that. We have another video that we have that kind of talks a little bit about the volunteers, and because they're so important here, I think we should take a look at that.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Hotline is a weekly studio talk show produced by MetroEast. The program highlights the important work that nonprofit organizations do in our community every day. And Community Hotline is volunteer-powered. The majority of the crew positions are filled by volunteers like you.
Community Hotline is a great way to get studio experience. It's easy to get involved, and it's fun. Take a listen to what some of our volunteers have to say about working on the program.
For volunteers, new volunteers, it's a great place for them to come in because they can learn about the whole production, from camera work to anything in the control room.
It was nice to be able to put my training to use. If you want to really hone your skills or you really want to learn in depth a particular aspect of production, you should actually do it hands-on.
My favorite thing is working with the people on the show.
They're good.
Those were some of my favorite volunteers right there. Yeah, and some of them are still active.
Well, I got to meet some of your volunteers in the control room. It sounds
great?
like some of them have been working on the show for quite a while.
Yeah, like Gary Thompson, who's been here forever, and yeah, it's a really good group, and everybody they kind of become like family. And
The thing I remember about volunteers, we were talking about how you gain skills and this and that, but it seemed like, from what I remember working with volunteers on productions, there were a lot of people, like you mentioned, Laird
P. Ross.
Yeah, Laird P. Ross. A lot of people like that worked with us for years. And sometimes they'd have their own productions, sometimes they would just come and work on ours, but it was this public access community.
Right.
They were, there to learn skills, but they were more there for, it's fun, and you've got a great group of people here.
It's a great social life if you...
It is, well, yeah.
People come here and we all become friends, and yeah.
We're all working on the same thing and trying to do our best.
And every once in a while we lose one of them, and it's really sad, because they're like family here. I think we only have a little bit of time left, but tell me what's the most rewarding thing to you about being involved in this show?
Well, like I mentioned, all those people I called that said they might come on the show, and then they did. Hey, and especially the ones that came back. But kind of the bigger picture, because it seems like a pretty basic thing that it would make sense that you do a show like this. Well, of course, why not? But it wasn't always that way, and it was something that developed for us over years, just the whole concept of community programming and getting out to the community and finding ways to bring more people in.
It was new.
And involving, to provide more value to those community groups and the viewers at home, because they're getting information, there's that connection. And it just really seems like it fills the mission of the organization. And like it all culminates in this one thing. There's lots of ways you serve the community, but this is one great example, because you can serve so many people, the nonprofits and the people out there watching, but also in a real efficient way for staff and a great way for volunteers, to be part of it too and to learn.
And it's a way for people that need the services of those agencies and nonprofits to find out about them too. So yeah, and so if people are interested in volunteering, we are looking for more people to volunteer on Community Hotline. Plus, if there's nonprofits out there that want to come and tell their story, this is a great service we have available.
You make it really easy for them.
Well, we try to, and there's so many great groups doing really wonderful things, and we include schools and some government agencies too. So if they have a story to tell, they want to get the word out, they want to help promote events, make a plea for volunteers, something like that, then hey, give us a call, and we would love to have them on the show. And
such a great service.
I don't anticipate being here, in another 20 years, but hopefully somebody else will be in. And still doing the Community Hotline show. Thanks, Angie, so much for being here today. I really
thanks
appreciate
for having
it.
Me. And you said you're going to bring me out for was it the 1,000th episode?
Yes, I can't even say it. Episode number 1,000
okay, yeah,
will be probably in May of next year.
Oh,
so
okay,
yeah. So
I'll put that down.
We'll see you then. Okay, thanks. Thanks so much for watching this very special episode of Community Hotline. We're really proud of our show. We're very grateful for our volunteers, and we thank you for joining us. Good night.